What's up? What's up, everybody? It's your man Nicholas Wildstar, aka the Governor, here with another Black Side of Liberty episode. And I appreciate all of you for being here because I got a wonderful guest here with me today. Of course, if you're out there watching, be sure to connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all that good stuff. As you can see right there at the bottom of the screen at Governor Wildstar, be sure to connect with me. And let's bring more attention to what we need to be in the know of what's really going on in the world. And it seems like there's two different brands of fascism currently going on. You know, you got the fascism on the left that wants to start war with Russia. And then you got fascism on the right that wants to start war with China and other countries and dictation over our personal liberties and freedoms. And that's being restricted by both parties as well. They all seem to have one demand or another. And it's just awful how, again, people who don't want to identify with either political party or their agenda and what they're demanding actually, applies to us all. We don't want to have those rules enforced upon us. We just want to be able to live free. And it's unfortunate, again, that these political parties do not allow us to, as according to the Constitution. But hopefully we can change that. But it starts first with awareness and us being in the know as to how those laws and restrictions on our freedom actually do apply to us all, no matter who's in power, a Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. So I got my buddy with me all the way from Colorado, Mr. Drew Nelson in the house. Drew, thank you for being here with me, buddy.
Well, always a pleasure. Sorry, I've been away for a little while. So
No, I can understand why. No, we're going to go into that here in a moment. I was just running on a quick tangent, telling people as to how, the two-party system has truly restricted our freedoms in so many ways. No matter who's in charge, they all have their way of, again, limiting our liberties. And with what just happened with you, Drew, it does pertain to us all, no matter what your political affiliation is, no matter what the color of your skin is,
yeah.
And a lot of people don't really have a true understanding about the depth and, about how deep that goes, and the gravity of the situation. So if you could just tell the people out there watching a little bit about the background of what you've experienced and what you're currently dealing with now.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think the issue we run into a lot of times is there really is, in my opinion, no two-party system. Republicans and Democrats, whoever they are, I mean, you can't name one Democrat senator that didn't get richer in office. You can't name one Republican senator that didn't get richer while in office. Sun Tzu says very plainly, let's divide and conquer. So let's keep them squabbling between red and blue while we make green. So the government as a whole, in my opinion, it is one body. It is one entity. We don't elect our public servants from outside the government. They're usually brought forth through the government for the most part. We do see some radicals and stuff that are brought in, which is great, the new ideas and everything like that, but they pretty quickly seem to fall into suit. Or I think what we've been noticing lately is it's almost a publicity show. They're doing makeup tutorials and all kinds of weird stuff now, and they're all over Twitter and doing weird things. So I appreciate your statements on that. I think we really need to realize that this fictional two-party system is just put forth against us, and I think that's we watch the lines blur. When you're looking at, say, the Democrat Party with specificity. They're supposed to be anti-government, anti-this and anti-police, but still big government, where the Republicans are, anti-government, but support the police. And I'm not saying anything wrong against the police, but, definitely.
That is a
But,
rare instance, if
but
I
we have
was.
to understand that police are the enforcement arm, the revenue generation arm of the government.
Hmm.
If the police weren't out there forcing commercial code on the people, which again, it's not their fault. Most of them don't know what they're doing, and most, we've had some great discussions lately amongst some circles of how judges really don't know what they're doing, and that's by design. You
Right.
know,
A lot of people get upset because they think I hate police officers, and that I'm anti-cop. I'm like, no, I'm anti-bad cop. And
yeah,
really, I think anybody that does the job of law enforcement is very admirable. And, it's a noble job and profession to go into because you're looking to do something that's in high demand. People want to feel protected and, have people that commit crimes be pursued, etc. But like you said, if it's revenue, if the incentive is to generate revenue, then their job would be a lot better and easier if you would just remove those laws.
right. Well, and I guess you have to go to foundation of what is a law. Statute, code, ordinance, rules, those are legislative acts. They're not law. They're quite separate from a law. Law is made through due process as a limitation on the government pursuant to the Constitution. So when I say due process, that comes through the appellate courts or the Supreme Courts, whether they be the state courts or the federal courts.
Right.
That's where we get our laws from. And laws are, like, if you look at Terry v. Ohio, it doesn't give police rights. It puts limitations on them on how they can interact with the public. And yeah, speaking of Terry, one of the biggest and I think most important parts of Terry that's constantly overlooked is the articulation aspect. Before a police officer can touch you, before the government can touch you, they have to articulate a crime that they suspect you of.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the Fourth Amendment. The Terry search, they have to articulate that they believe you have a gun on your left hip before they search your left hip. They can't just randomly search.
Is that where the term Terry stop came from as well?
Yeah, Terry stop is based on Terry v. Ohio, which is basically the detainment authority of a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the limitation from the Supreme Court on how they are to act, how they are supposed to bring forth their authority to proceed with us. So the bottom line is, if they don't articulate a crime, you have absolutely no reason to talk to them. Even if you could be caught committing a crime, but if they don't articulate that, they don't have authority. It's the articulation aspect. So, but getting back to my situation's been pretty interesting. I was on a while ago. So basically, what I did is I got into the court system in 2015. Quite honestly, through a custody battle with an illegal alien. My first questions, of course, and I have no problem with immigration. I don't care what people do until it affects me. It's their life. And I obviously understand leaving their countries and this and that to come to America where they get everything. And, however, I go into court and first thing I say is, what gives standing? Somebody outside the law can't bring the power of the state against one of the people. Judge says, oh, I say so. So I said, well, she gets a free attorney, free court, free this. She's using public funds through the Legal Services Corporation Act that are reserved for Americans or citizens within criminal matters, and they're prohibited on illegal aliens and in civil cases. So what allows you to proceed? And the judge said, because I say so. So I pretty quickly learned things aren't going to go right in these courts. And so I, after fighting and throughout, I actually forced that judge into retirement. And soon after that happened, I started getting random criminal charges, child abuse for removing my son from the hospital for a minor fever. They tried to say I stole from my own business, and all these crazy cases. And I've been beating them left and right. It's just, it's been a tough one. So I realized what they're doing. And if you look at, 27 CFR 7211, in the code, it clearly says all crimes are commercial. And I started doing some research on that and realized that the judiciary courts for the state of Colorado have a DUNS number. They have an EIN. They're publicly listed as a not-for-profit agency that's making a profit.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is, realizing they're in commerce, I did what they do to us, and I offered a contract, a settlement agreement, and a claim to title and a claim to estate, and moved forward with that. And that had an arbitration clause. And I don't know if you know about arbitration. It's a de jure court with authority over the United States and within the United States under Title IX. So these arbitrators are basically considered judges, except it's common law, which is, one of the top jurisdictions of law. So I took these judges through common law arbitration, and I won. And as soon as I won, they took my child, trafficked him across state lines. I haven't seen him in 4 years, and it's been brutal. So I started doing the collection process. And the way arbitration works is, after 90 days, in the Federal Arbitration Act, 9 U.S.C. 12, they've got 90 days to challenge the arbitration. And they can only challenge it based on very specific things, such as there was fraud in the factum, or, the arbitrator surpassed their powers pursuant to the contract. So obviously these judges didn't do that. And again, they can't claim ignorance of the law. That's a double-edged sword. It's not meant for us as well. It's meant for us as well as it's meant for them.
Right.
The government can't claim ignorance of the law and get away with it. So these awards became final, irreversible, and so I started collection. As soon as I started collection, I was arrested. I was put in jail. I attempted to collect on 2 of the respondents. Both claimed to be judges. However, the arbitrator found that they were never in capacity. It's important to remember, a judge is a capacity. It's not a title, because under Article 1, Section 10, we can't bestow a title of nobility. So when you see that Esquire behind a name, that's absolutely prohibited by constitutional mandate.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started my collection processes, called up and said, hey, pursuant to the contract, I'm going to have to begin asset seizure and foreclosure unless you want to cure this debt. It's a lawful debt.
Mm-hmm.
I was arrested for retaliation against a judge. I spent 15 days in jail at $1 million bond.
What?
$1 million bail. Yes. And finally, I got that bail reduced, got out, and started fighting 10 months later, a different city with a different judge from the same night, same everything, filed the same charges. So I thought, I'll just go turn myself in, because, I've got animals and stuff like that. And so it's easier for me to plan to turn myself in. I had my bondsman coming the next day to get me out. The judge looked at me, said, well, crimes have been committed, and I don't like your filings, so I'm doing $100,000 cash only bail.
Oh my God.
Which is, so this was an F4 felony, one of the lowest felonies. No violence, no threat of harm.
Mm-hmm.
I never went and knocked on a judge's door or anything like that. And please, I just use the term judge just, for conversation's sake.
Right.
So I spent 126 days in jail, 124 days in jail in horrible conditions. Jail is actually worse than prison, I've learned. You have more rights and freedoms in prison than you do in jail. I spent 124 days in jail until the judge realized that his bail was, quote, oppressive. And basically it took me 2 months just to even get enough paper to write a case, and no access to a law library, anything like that. So I basically had to, out of my mind, write to the Supreme Court to reduce my bail. As soon as that hit the record of the Supreme Court, all of a sudden my judge held a hearing and reduced the bail. So they obviously talk amongst themselves. So I'm out and I'm fighting these charges. They didn't provide discovery, and it's obviously a one-sided thing. And of course, they filed new felonies saying that my filings are the filings that the arbitrator specifically said are valid, binding, and irrevocable contract rights protected under Article 1, Section 10, and under de jure common law contract clause or contract law. They've decided they're fake, so they've assigned a new felony, and they're basically just trying to throw me in prison. The advantage is, under the Federal Arbitration Act and under congressional mandate, I do have absolute qualified immunity. I know that's not a word that we love to hear coming from that side of the arena, but right. On our side, I went to arbitration. Arbitrator said to do ABC. I did ABC, and they arrested me. So I'm going to the appellate court here in Colorado to invoke my my qualified immunity and say, what the heck's going on here? At the same time, I've taken this and I'm trying to pull it out of the hands of Colorado. Colorado has been found to be the most corrupt, and I know you're in California, but
Right.
but if you look at the Denver Post, there's been several articles. Colorado has been deemed the most corrupt judicial branch in the United States. Last year, there was a woman, or they did a state audit and found that they've been stealing millions of dollars every year, just buying new cars, going on vacations. The judges are just using our money. There's no accounting for it. So, we've got criminal theft. Right. And then on top of it, a woman that worked for the judiciary got fired for stealing funds. And they basically, she came back and said, well, here's a 2-page memo of judges that have committed misconduct, sexual misconduct, criminal acts. So the Supreme Court of Colorado, in its infinite wisdom, offered her a $2.5 million contract to shut up.
Wow.
And this is all unfolding right in front of the public in the newspaper. And I know that's not the most popular medium these days, but of course it's online and on Facebook and everything as well. And we're sitting here watching this just unfold, and every day these courts are still proceeding. And it's like, how is this RICO corporation presiding over us with any such authority?
I mean, it's extremely disgusting because, like you said, here's a high profile case happening in Colorado exposing the corruption in courts. And, what happened with you shows just how deep it goes.
Yeah.
And, it's extremely excessive for them to punish you, supposedly, by imposing this $100,000 cash only bail. And there's a lot of people that are against getting rid of the cash bail system. But here's a perfect example of, what happened with you as to a reason why we should be getting rid of those excessive bail, impositions. Because, I mean, who can really afford that? And are they really expecting you to? They're not.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it, it's already prohibited.
Right.
The Colorado Supreme Court has flat out said you cannot use bail as a punishment. Bail must be reasonable to where you don't affect their day-to-day life by them being able to pay it. It must be obtainable. And that's exactly what happened. I literally have the transcript where the judge says crimes have been committed and then punished me with $100,000 cash only bail. So he used bail as a punishment. Now, don't get me wrong. I had the second highest bail in the facility. There was a gentleman there that had a $250,000 cash only. He had chopped up his mother with a machete.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He wasn't anywhere near us or anything like that. I was out in general population, and of course with COVID, locked down most of the time. But so I'm all there does have to be some restriction of those that are dangerous.
Well, yeah, I mean that they could have did that strictly with just any type of bail. It didn't have to be cash only, but in your situation, like you said, it's the lowest felony charge that they could, drum up, and it's still equivalent to a guy who chopped up, his family. So
Yeah.
it's like, where is the justice really coming into play? And it's
Right.
It's arbitrary, because what it sounds like is they retaliated against you for being intelligent enough to know the law, ins and outs of laws, to maneuver through the system without any type of legal counsel, and they hate that. But
Yeah.
when you represent yourself and you take that matter to a higher court, that's when the judge finally comes back and says, you know what, the bail was excessive, so I'm going to reduce it altogether.
And it was my idea.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah. Well, and you hit another interesting point is these bar members. Oops, did I freeze?
No, you're good to go.
Okay. You hit another interesting point with these bar members and how they're running our courts. I mean, more than half of our legislature here in Colorado are bar members. So, this foreign agency is running our nation because, I mean, what is bar? British Accreditation Registry. It's a foreign member association, and they're running our country from within.
Exactly.
But it's interesting that you say that, because I actually just went to this judge recently, And he's like, well, do you want an attorney? I said, well, let me be frank. I understand law. I'm competent in Constitution. I understand due process. But what you're doing is an administrative process, not of Article 3 and outside the bounds of limitations of law and Constitution. So I'd like assistance of counsel to aid me through your processes, because your processes are not consistent with law. And he says, you don't get the choice. It's either you're fully, what did he say? Either you don't get counsel or you're fully represented. I said, I don't want to be represented fully. I just want assistance of counsel as per Amendment 6. He said, too bad, you can't have that. So they do fear us, and they do fear what we can say and what we can do in court, because we do have the power. And when we take that back, that's where we need to really start fighting.
Right.
You said something early on about how the laws are restrictions on freedom and stuff like that. And that what we need to start doing is, we have all these people that go out there and say, well, I have this right. I have this right. We need to stop doing that. We need to say, you have this limitation. You know, our rights are, they're immune from the government. The Constitution. Yeah.
You got God-given rights, and not every right you have as a human being is listed on paper. And to think that another man can give you your rights or grant them to you is absurd. I mean, if you want to live that way, then go live in a monarchy, go live in a, communistic society, go live in a dictatorship. Don't live in America, because that shit don't fly here. And anybody that wants to try to, present that in any way, shape, or form is going to experience resistance. I mean, that's why the government that we have today is being fought against, at every angle or every turn, is because we're not stupid, and we know that, the basics of who we are as human beings. You cannot dictate how I live my life. But it seems as if, the recent pandemic, I'm not going to call it, speak about it too much, because I got a recent strike on YouTube. It was banned for talking about the virus that shall not be named. But so it seems like that crisis was used as an opportunity to restrict our freedoms, restrict our liberties, and for them to assume that authority over saying, I get to tell you what you can and cannot do. It's like, wait, didn't we give you guys the job to suppose it govern? And you're absolutely right. I have to educate people all the time. The job of a governor is to govern over government. Any job in government is meant to govern over the body that you're within. And if you're not part of that government body, then their rules, their regulations, their laws does not apply to you.
Well, and the best way to look at that, the way I try to break it down to people, is first, the Constitution doesn't give you rights. It sets a limitation on the government for intrusion on your rights. It's not a granting document, it's a limiting document.
Yeah.
And
I just like what this guy says, so I'm just pointing it out to the viewers. For sure. Guy, gal, whoever is ex-revolution.
Exactly. So something you're born with. And the best way to look at it, you as a father, you come home and your child doesn't come up to you and say, hey, Dad, you're grounded.
Right.
Your creation can't take dominion over you. And it was never designed to be that way. Yeah, we have certain obligations, societal obligations, we do have jury trials and stuff for people that cause harm to other people. But look at what our court systems have become, where the state is the plaintiff. How can I pull a corporate fiction onto the stand to question it? The state has taken the role of the victim. The state is the prosecution. The state is everything. And it's like, I can no more call, the state of Colorado up on the stand than I can Mickey Mouse.
Exactly.
So that under the Sixth Amendment, that's denying my right to face my accuser. My accuser doesn't exist. My accuser's a thing. It's an it. So, our whole court system has turned from quite literally having an accuser to the state's just running the show. to make profit. And let's go back to the police officers that we were talking about before. When you look at the Act of 1933, when the United States went bankrupt, it was bankrupt far before that, but after the Federal Reserve and everything like that, the United States went bankrupt. The corporate entity went bankrupt. The states forfeited their sovereignty to join in the bankruptcy. At that time, the courts openly converted to for-profit, privately held corporations, and the police went from peace officers to law enforcement, tasked with revenue generation. We can never expect our police to really stop crime. It's the same as FEMA. It's the same as all these other things. They're aftermath response vehicles. If there's a crime that occurs, they come investigate it, they find who did it, and they bring them to light so that you can face the person that harmed you.
Right.
And again, like I said, the state's taken over as the role of the prosecution and everything like that. So it used to be we would prosecute. So your creation isn't supposed to be bossing you around. We created our government to cover interstate commerce, watch our borders, and manage our wars. We created state governments to manage commerce within the states. That's why I'm in Colorado. Colorado was one of the first to do the marijuana stuff. And I personally don't use marijuana, but I think it's great. I think, I've watched a lot of veterans go off heavy narcotics, and obviously we can do that on another show sometime. But what Colorado said is, we're growing it here. We're smoking it here. Federal government, your rules have no applicability to us because there's no interstate commerce. Federal government had to stop. They couldn't enforce their rules if there was no trucks of marijuana going between the states. Colorado wasn't shipping it out. It was growing it here and selling it here, and it was getting used here. For the most part, obviously people were taking it across the border and stuff on their own, but that's neither here nor there. So we created this government to manage certain things, and it has gone far beyond what its initial intent was. And we were warned of this very specifically. When you look at our founders, they warned us throughout everything that this was going to occur. But when you get into these court systems, you have to realize they're not courts, they're banks.
Right.
And they're about, you walk in, the first thing they do behind your back is slap a bond on you.
Right.
I checked 3 years ago, I had 426 bonds behind the Social Security number.
Oh my God.
People
don't realize how we're just still being used as collateral in this chattel slaves. Yeah, exactly. So being a black man, whenever you bring up slavery or abuses of police, it's like people either turn turn a blind ear to it or deaf ear to it, or it's more of the stereotypical things that's being said. So
well, let's go down that avenue if you don't mind, because that's one of the things I'm fighting right now. I've got several cases that I'm working on throughout. I help people with their cases. Several cases that I'm working on where we have a situation. For example, I've got this awesome group of guys here in Colorado that have a church, and they had a whole bunch of dogs. Little dogs, and they used them for therapy. They used them for love, and they never bred them to sell them. They weren't kenneling dogs. They were making no profit off these dogs.
Okay.
The state came in with PACFA, which is the Pet Animal Care Facility Act, and said, you guys are in commerce. We want money from you, and you have to follow our rules.
Oh my God, for dogs, man?
Yeah, they took the dogs. They said you don't have a license to have these dogs. And
another permission slip, man.
Right, but the question is, Colorado in, I think it was 2017, passed Article 2, Section 26, which prohibits slavery and peonage. So what we have, quite literally, and not to disparage the history of slavery, which is just disgusting, but what we have is modern day slavery where you're in commerce all the time, regardless of what you want to be, and the government can enforce commercial code on you because we say so.
Right.
And you can go, when I had a ticket for registration, I took it all the way to trial. And I the one question I asked when I walked in there, I put that police officer on the stand and I said, at what point did you decide I was in commerce? I'm not a commercial vehicle. I wasn't in commerce. I wasn't applying, making money on the road. So why are you enforcing commercial processes on somebody not in commerce? That's, at the time the peonage wasn't it was just coming about, but you can understand where I'm coming from, that, the forcing a free man to be in commerce when he doesn't want to be, as a means to generate revenue, is a form of peonage that we're seeing every day right now, and people aren't realizing that that's what it really is.
Right.
And that's what's scary.
The confusion is people think that the language used in a courtroom is just common language. When we talk about common laws, don't kill people, don't steal from people, don't lie and cheat each other, that's common knowledge. So when you talk about common law, people think, oh, okay, that makes sense. But when you talk about commercial codes and the application of it with everything that could be considered a crime, every penal code, every statute, people don't understand about how it relates to a different group of people simply because of the language that's being used. Like what you said, you're a traffic court and you ask the judge, hey, officer, when did you decide that I was in commerce? And most likely, I'm pretty sure they started to recite some vehicle code.
Nope, he just said commerce. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, goodness. See, so he just played dumb. But yeah, you got people that would think, hey, respectively, there's vehicle codes and you broke a traffic code. So because of that, you broke the law and you should be punished because of that,
Yeah.
So that's
and they're like, you're not above the law. I said, well, we all are.
Yeah.
The law is not meant for us. It's meant, and I didn't harm anybody.
Right.
There was no harm. It was quite literally just calculating revenue.
Right. Because all right, you get a speeding ticket. People see the sign and they look at that sign as a presentation of that law, saying specifically you must not exceed this speed, or whatever the case may be. So people automatically see that sign and think that it applies to them as a traveler exercising their right to travel, not a commercial driver who that sign applies to. Right. It only applies to the commercial driver. If you're not using your car or truck or whatever like you said, if you're not using it for any means to make money, you are not a commercial vehicle. It's like common knowledge, but it gets misunderstood because the law system is the one dictating the atmosphere of that knowledge. So
well, and it's in the language arts that they use as well. For example, the Supreme Court has flat out held that there is a difference between an automobile and a motor vehicle. An automobile is a pleasure vehicle. A motor vehicle is one for commerce. So when you look at the commercial code, it says you're driving, which is for profit. They've defined that, and you're in a motor vehicle. That's just in our common nomenclature now. Where, I'm sorry, when I say I'm going to go drive down the road, I'm not really in commercial or in commerce, but that's just how we talk, because that's how we've been conditioned. So when average Joe Blow sees the law that says when you're driving to here and you have to do that, it just clicks on them. And it's funny that you mentioned this, because I was working with a friend of mine in Illinois who actually dug up a child's book from about the early mid 1800s.
Okay.
And it was what they learned in school. And I think I'm decently versed in law. This was a child's book, and it was incredible. The language, the knowledge, the way that things are implemented and stated to maintain constitution and common law and all these different aspects. So when we look at the dumbing down of America, it's we've come a long way from what we were built as.
Yeah. I need that book, man. You gotta recommend it to me. Let me know the name of it.
I'll send you a link.
Absolutely. But you're absolutely right. The dumbing down of our society started with our educational system. Most people don't know about the Constitution itself, the Bill of Rights, how it applies to the law system or them as a natural person. The legalese of this profession, which is, the language of the industry. If you were a mechanic, there would be certain, engineering terms that would be used that the normal, average person wouldn't have a clue what the hell they meant, and the same thing happens with our justice system. But it's unfortunate that, again, many people are pulled into it somehow, some way, and don't have a clue of really of what's going on. And it's awful that you were told by that judge that pretty much you have to choose an attorney, or their approved representative, because I've actually seen case laws where it said you have the right to practice law. They can't deny you the right to, to exercise law. But that's another thing that's been done. As well versed as you may be in law, you can't represent somebody else, because that's entering that commercial zone, I guess, or whatever the case may be.
But even up until I think 1972, the Supreme Court was saying very plainly that the practice of law is a liberty right. Laymen can practice law. Laymen can be counsel. Laymen can do these things. And it wouldn't be a violation of practicing law without a license. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. What is a license? In its simplest terms, a license is permission to break the law.
Yeah, a permission slip.
Yeah, it's permission to do something that you're not allowed to do. Like you might need a license to do heart surgery because, I'm not going to go cut open a guy and, valve. I needed to get some training and, have a license because that's something that we're not allowed to do. It's just on a day-to-day basis. So why do we have to have a marriage license? God's law is very clear. Marry, get married, have children. Why do we have to license something that God quite literally said to go do?
Or go fishing. How about that? What I'm saying?
Go fishing, go driving, but license to sell a house.
A firearm, which says in our Second Amendment, we have the right to do. It's a natural right, shall not be denied or infringed, period. There is no, in case of, or ... or, there is no, other definition than what you see right there. But yet we have elected officials on the right, on the left, who feel like they should be able to restrict our right to bear arms. And we have a population who supports that as well.
And I'm going to cut you off right there. One thing that I always like to point out is I don't have any elected officials. I have public servants or elected employees. I don't see they give themselves these titles. You're not an official. You're doing a term of service for us.
Right.
And I think that's where we really need to start taking our power back. Like I said, it's not saying, well, I have this right. It's, hey, you have this limitation.
Exactly.
And you are a public servant. Right. So what I'm trying to do right now is something a little different. I'm trying to go on the Uniform Commercial Code under UCC 1. And for example, this judicial employee that told me that I'm not allowed to have assistance of counsel, where Amendment 6 clearly says I have the right to assistance of counsel. It's protected. And also in Colorado, it says I have the right to defend in person and with counsel, not in person or with counsel. Somehow they've decided to change and to or. So what I'm doing is I'm going on and I'm leaning his oath. I'm going to do a simple lien on the oath, not on him personally, not on his house, not on his property, but basically lien that oath, claim $100,000 on that bond. So bring forth the bond. Otherwise, your personal property comes up as collateral.
Now you're going to have to explain what that means to the people out there to where they don't have a clue what the hell you're saying. So break that down of what you mean, a lien on their oath.
Okay. And again, I'm not a guru. I'm not, I'm trying things, and I'm making headway. I know that. I mean, obviously, if I wasn't a threat, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing to me.
Oh, of course.
And again, doing it ruthlessly. They're not even pretending to be a real court at this point. Uh, that it's pretty blatant. But
I
so
mean,
a
it
lien
sounds
is, for example, if you have a mortgage on your house, the mortgage company puts a lien on it so that you can't sell that house, you can't do anything until you cure the deficiency.
right.
So I basically say, hey, I'm going to lien your office. I'm going to lien your oath. Your oath is a contract to me that you're going to stay within the limitations of law and constitution.
Hmm.
And it's supposed to be bonded, and these oaths are supposed to be public. We have yet to find any bonds on any oaths. I actually was speaking to somebody that's incredibly intelligent. She found some just by happenstance, found a company that had bonded a local judge. So she called the company. The company said, we don't have record of that.
Right.
So she went into the local office to the local guy and said, I want to see this bond. He pulled it off of his personal computer. So they don't even publish it within the companies. They hide these things so well because these judges go into office with full intent to act mischievous. They
Right.
have full intention of violating rights. They have full intention of acting not consistent with constitutional parameters. So they hide these oaths and they make it so it's very difficult for us to find. So basically, I'm saying the same thing that I would to you. If you hit me with your car and I said, produce your insurance, and you didn't produce your insurance, what's the next step? You're held personally liable.
Right.
That's the way it is. That's why we have insurance. It's a buffer between you and me.
Exactly.
So if you don't have that buffer, you are held personally liable, and these judges are not above the law. They're under the law. So, and that's the typical process, especially under the Uniform Commercial Code. So my thought process at this point is lien that oath, basically say, you've caused a damage that I need you to cure before you can proceed in this department.
Mm-hmm.
So technically that lien should stop them from being able to adjudicate, from doing anything. It'll stop them from receiving federal funds into their insurance or into their retirement funds and stuff like that. It's supposed to do all that, but I mean, again, I have an arbitration judgment that should have ended everything.
Right.
So you're trying to apply law to the lawless and the guys that run the banks. It gets a little tough. So the idea is to lien the oath, claim $100,000 because it's a typical $100,000 bond that they're supposed to have. Claim that damage and put up their personal assets as collateral. Shall they not produce the bond? Again, we run into the situation, which is the most difficult part of real law, common law, de jure law, is we don't have enforcement.
Right.
Common law used to be enforced by militia.
Right.
We don't have militia, and the militia we do have are, they're not quite. I mean, they're still. You can't really go up against the police force.
Right. So
You
let
know,
me say this because you brought up a very good point, and I've been speaking with people who call themselves Moors, and basically present this new identity as a melanated person, as a black person here in this country, to say we have a certain nationality that is outside of the jurisdiction of the American law system. I like to argue against that because of what you just pointed out. They have the enforcers. As much as we want to say your laws don't apply to me, whether it be traffic codes or penal codes or any other kind of health and safety codes, just whatever codes they can come up with, they're still being imposed upon us simply because of those guys with guns threatening us. So what you were talking about, coming at it from the UCC angle, which is the Universal Commercial Code angle, to combat those codes that they try to impose upon you. How could someone that I guess wants to think that they can get out of this system by embracing a new nationality, be successful at doing so without any type of militia to protect them?
That's the hard part, because technically that's what I've done. I've claimed myself, I've claimed my status, I've authenticated my birth certificate, I've severed every link, that quasi-eminent abridgment from the creation to me. And again, you hear about the straw man.
Right.
It's not a straw man from what I've studied and what we've researched, and it's a straw estate. They
Right.
basically create a state, they create a trust. And don't get me wrong, this trust is actually genius. Even though you really, we're working on getting access to it, and I've talked to some people who are actually starting to pay themselves out of their own government trust. And I'm not too up on all how they're doing that yet. I'm close, but there's a lot to it. But what happens, is, if you go to the hospital and you don't pay, this trust covers it. So, this trust is here because we would have collapsed financially into financial ruins years ago if we didn't have these trusts behind us, to support some of this. So whoever, or the agency that thought of it's genius. However, they're profiting off of it. And
Yeah, I was going to say are essentially bonds being taken out in our name
yeah,
for our labor,
yeah,
to borrow against or to use as collateral for the borrowing that the government is doing from the Federal Reserve for these, fake dollars that we call, money,
yeah,
the fiat currency. So
yeah. Out of
that's
Article
what
1,
it's
Section
being
10.
used
Yeah,
for.
yeah. There's actually a House Bill, 5404. Don't quote me on that. Being presented right now to bring back a gold exchange for currency. So
That
don't know where
would
that'll go, but
that
yeah.
would
So
pick things
so
up
th-
if that's
so to
true.
answer your question, we run into the. So basically, my goal at this point is to put up buffers, that, walls that they have to go through. So what my plan is to take, because I can't get my arbitration judgments confirmed. The law clearly says that they shall confirm it, they must confirm it, they must do these things. Every time I file it, they're like, no. It's against our buddies, so we're going to make up some. The latest was that they didn't. Again, arbitration is reviewing the contract.
Hmm.
They decided they reviewed the contract and they didn't understand it or like it. It's like, well, that's why I had an arbitration clause, not a district court magistrate clause. The arbitrator understood it.
Yeah.
So, um, so how do we enforce this? And that's the big question. And boy, if I had that magic wand, we'd be having a different conversation right now. I think there was a gentleman in Colorado that a group of people that basically created their own grand jury.
Okay.
And it was a petite grand jury. It wasn't a constitutional grand jury. It was just a group of people that went
Or
around.
common law grand jury.
Yeah, but they weren't fully functioning as a grand jury. I mean, a grand jury is quite literally investigation and adjudication. It's basically all rolled into one. What
Yeah.
they were doing is they found that the majority of judges in Colorado, just like you'll find anywhere else, did not fill out their oaths and bonds in accordance with constitutional parameters. Colorado says you must file an oath and bond before the commencement of your term. If you don't do that, your office is deemed vacant.
Hmm.
Obviously, the Supreme Court tried to write themselves a pass saying, well, you can fill it out later, but no, the Constitution says before the commencement of your term.
Right.
Period. You
And
don't
a
get to
lot
come
of
in later and fix what you didn't do. You don't unring that bell. So these guys went around and they basically just said, "Oh, your bond's not good or your oath's not good, so we're going to lien your house."
Mhm.
And I think, and they got arrested. The guy's spending like 29 years in prison.
Oh my God.
Yeah, just while principally he was right, what we have to do is be better. I've got a judge that quite literally said, crimes were committed, you're going to stay in jail.
Hmm.
So we have to provide process after process after process to protect ourselves. And even that doesn't work. I mean, like I said, I went through
Yeah, I'm like, they
I went
don't have
through
to
a
provide any,
process.
you
They were
know?
invited to arbitration. They chose not to show up. I got a default judgment. And they're like, oh, your arbitration was fake. You were invited. You were invited to show up. How can you sit there and say it was fake when you were summoned to show up and you didn't show up?
Right.
And the irony is you're coming from quite literally you're challenging a de jure law, or did your process of law from a de facto commercial entity? You're the fake one. Pot,
Exactly.
tea, kettle, don't throw rocks in glass houses, you know. So I think that we really need to be more secure in our processes and make sure that we've done better than they do, because they're just going to break the law. Um,
And that's what I think. That's what I think defeat the purpose is because why improve your process of filing their paperwork if they're still going to ignore it completely? I mean, like you said, they're de facto agents, rogue enemies of the state that are pretty much occupying these positions fraudulently, illegally, and unconstitutionally. But because of their position, because of their rule of authority through the
their perception of authority.
yeah, protection of authority, yeah, through their strong arm, branch, we fold, and they continue with this criminal network that pretty much continues to treat us like we're property in a country where enslavement of other people is supposed to be against the law. It's not happening. So, if anything, I feel like we need to tip and racket that magic wand that you're talking about. We got to take over government, man. We
Yeah.
we got to get in there at executive levels, people who know the stuff like what you're talking about, or at least have advisors, consultants around them to inform them.
Or ethics.
Yeah, and that's really all you need, And once you swear to uphold the United States Constitution, if you read it, that's the limitation of your authority. So if you
Yeah.
can't do the job according to what that says, you don't deserve it at all. Hopefully, we can get more people out there watching, inspired. They'll see what's happening with your case, see that it can actually happen to any of us, regardless again of your skin color, because they love to do this whole black white racial divide bullshit. Hasn't gotten us any further, but the justice system that exists right now, it criminalizes all. We're all guilty before proven innocent. And if you ever challenge a traffic ticket or any type of engagement that you've had with the law system, you'll find out for yourself.
100%. And I mean, the goal is, have you had a traffic ticket recently?
Thankfully, no.
It's like a cattle call. It literally, you walk in and the judge makes you an offer, and this, and it's like, wait a minute, are you the prosecution? Are you the judge? Who's? It literally is just a banking system.
Actually, no. I take that back. I had a speeding ticket, and I got a notice in the mail saying it was like my third time, and they were going to issue a bench warrant and all of this stuff. So, thankfully, due to this COVID stuff, you can now attend court over the phone. So I just called in, and I'm listening to every case before me, and the judge or commissioner most likely is calling up each and every person, making them plead guilty, not guilty, guilty, not guilty. Every person, guilty plea because they wanted to avoid having to go to trial. Well, when he got around to me and asked me guilty, not guilty, I said I'm not going to enter a plea. If anything, I want the injured party to be here to resolve this matter, since this is technically that hearing. And he's like, no, well, that's not how we do things. We're going to have to schedule it for a trial. I'm like, well, then why ask me guilty, not guilty, if we're going to go through a trial anyway to determine if I'm guilty or not guilty? I mean,
well, and let's dissect that real quick. When did you become not guilty instead of innocent?
Exactly.
So you're again going back into their terminology, and if you do get a trial, it'll be a trial by jury, and it'll be a jury trial instead of a trial by jury. So there's a lot of little misnomers in there that you have to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's interesting because it's interesting you say that, because the truth is there's ample case law that makes clear that the time before the plea is an arbitration time, where you're supposed to talk to the district attorney, you're supposed to talk to the injured party, and you're supposed to try to work it out before you use the state.
Right.
When you walk in the very first hearing, the judge is like, guilty or not guilty. That's outside of due process of law. Due process is having the opportunity to discuss the issue before it goes to a court.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're denying that aspect of it to quite literally generate some revenue. I was going to say earlier, when you look at the Act of 1933, look at the amount of statutes that have risen since then and are continuing to rise because they realized
the book is
they realized they can just start capitalizing off of you walking down the street in a green shirt.
Right.
They could, because people will just comply and be like, okay. And that's really what it falls down on, is the compliance of the people. The people haven't educated themselves. I mean, they don't even teach civics.
That's what's so stupid is people on the right and the left are so compliant. I mean, look at what's going on with the stuff in Canada right now. We're actually going to be wrapping up soon, but the Freedom Convoy, those are essentially just peaceful protesters out there now being abused by police officers. And that's hard for the quote unquote conservatives that are really neocons, the far right extremists, because they're the ones that are supportive of that authority when it comes to BLM and their peaceful protests, because not everybody out there is breaking shit and setting shit on fire. We all know more than likely those are agent provocateurs, people hired to do that shit so they can then come in and break up the protests,
Well, we saw this with COVID when it first started. Police were going into churches and breaking up churches.
Right.
Like,
where was the right then? What were they doing? They were just sleeping. And it's like, you can complain about it, but these are the same people that you want to say respect their authority. Just do what they're saying. Well, respect their authority. Just do what they're saying. Shut down your churches. Shut down, or get off the streets like they're telling you to, and go home and stay home if that be the case. But we got to rebel, man. We got to stop being compliant. We got to realize that we're the real authority here, and they are our servants,
Right. And we've got to, and you talk to them like that. And again, I believe our remedy is in these trusts. It's going to be in, when you hurt their bottom. How do you make a change in Walmart? You affect their bottom dollar, right? You affect their wallet, their intake.
Giving them your money.
Yeah, and if we can affect it, you said it earlier, if everybody that got a speeding ticket today said, I'm taking this to trial.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Would collapse within a day.
Oh yeah, that was another thing. So that was the end of it. The judge said he'll schedule it for trial. And I got a call back like later on that week from the clerk saying that they had dismissed the case because the arresting officer had retired. But
the truth is, the profitability wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And they would have spent more money on dragging me to court and all of that versus what they would have gotten out of me. So it's unfortunate, man, that this is the system that we're dealing with. Hopefully people will rebel right now when it matters, so we can eliminate this system from continuing to oppress the next generation. We got to do it. We can't keep rolling it, off of our shoulders onto the next one. The generation before us did that. We got to say the buck stops here with us. Drew, I thank you so much for being here and sharing your story, man, because as awful as it is, hopefully it'll be inspiring to others out there watching this to join you in that fight. You can't do it alone. I won't let you do it alone. And I'm putting a call to action out there to everybody watching to not let us do it alone. All right. Thank you again for being here, brother.
Thank you for having me. Great to see you again.
And you as well. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.
All right.
All right, you guys. That again is my friend and brother from another mother, Drew Nelson, a fellow freedom fighter out there in Colorado, doing everything in his power to make sure that our freedoms and liberties stay intact. That's what it takes, is us rising up just as he has, with the knowledge that he has in law. He's applying it and putting it to use to free us all, and people don't realize it, but just even on the smallest level, if you can rebel against the system, and win. It's a victory that helps us all. If you do that, you create what's called case law, and now it can be used to fight against those laws in other parts of the country, and of course wherever you are. And so if you want to help people locally, then fight the power. That's really all it takes. Connect with me right there at the bottom of the screen at Governor Wildstar on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all that good stuff. Of course, if you're out there watching on YouTube, please definitely subscribe. Don't leave me hanging, y'all. Click that notification bell or whatever. I don't know. They're changing it up every damn week, it says. Just click that notification, whatever there, and make sure you stay in touch with me, all right? Because I will continue to drop videos as I go. Speaking of which, if you guys want to help contribute to the cause, to the fight for freedom, definitely be sure to check out taxationistheft.info. That's taxationistheft.info right there at the bottom of the screen. And as soon as I can share my screen, then I'll show you exactly what I'm looking at. There we go. All right. Check out taxationistheft.info right there, and buy any of the Taxation is Theft merchandise using my code GOWILD2022. That's GOWILD2022, and you'll get 10% off of your purchase, whether it be a t-shirt, a bumper sticker, a hoodie, a keychain, or one of my favorite things, one of these Taxation is Theft stamps. You can buy right here on taxationistheft.info and use my code to get a discount, okay? And also head on over to Nug of Knowledge, nugofknowledge.com, right there at the bottom of your screen, and use my code WILDSTAR. If you'd like to purchase any CBD products wherever you are in the country, CBD is 100% legal. So you can purchase these products on the website using my code WILDSTAR. And any Nug of Knowledge purchase goes towards research into the war on drugs, those laws that prevent cannabis purchases and sales, and prosecutions, people that have ended up in jail because of cannabis. So we want to help those people, and the people out there that want to help those people, like myself, candidates that are fighting to change that legislation. So head on over to nugofknowledge.com, buy any of these buy any of these high potency CBD products using my code WILDSTAR, and again, get money off that, okay? I do appreciate all of you guys for being here with me, all of the people that dropped comments, and those of you that did not, I appreciate you for watching. Be sure to come back next time. Of course, if you want to contribute and help the cause, you can donate to me directly, Cash App, using Cash App, $ Governor Wildstar, okay? I appreciate you guys all again for being here with me, and until next time, definitely take care. Long live liberty. I'm up out of here. Peace.